incredibly mobile couple. One of the highlights of my summer last year was a gathering of a few of us in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is the first time that I'd really spent time in person with Stephen and Shae Pepper. And I wanted to share with you all. They're an original odd couple, and not that they're different. They're just incredibly entertaining. So I think we're in for a lot of fun tonight. Welcome. All right. So you've got two very different accents, but you are together from very different backgrounds.
Yes.
You have embarked on this trip that's I think the ultimate test of a couple's strength. So tell everybody this trip you're on.
Okay, we're on a 5-year, 50-state road trip, and we set out on January 1st, 2018. So in theory, we're almost halfway through, but in terms of the number of states we've done, I think we're up to about
20.
Yeah, we're up to 20 at the moment. So we're not actually quite halfway through. Plus, we've had to delay it at the moment due to COVID-19. But yeah, we just travel all around the US, traveling full time. And because we're doing it over the course of 5 years, then we spend an average of 5 weeks in each state. So that way, that gives us a chance to be able to see a bit more of each state. So smaller states, we spend less time in. So Rhode Island, we did 10 days. Connecticut, we did, I think, 3 weeks.
It was 3 weeks too long.
3 weeks too long, yeah.
Sorry,
Connecticut was our least favorite. No offense. And then for bigger states, then we stay longer. So we spent 10 weeks in Texas, which again was probably a bit too much time for Texas, but there were some places.
Don't tell Texans, but yes.
Yeah, but there were some places there that we really enjoyed during our time there. But that way, we figured that 10 weeks would give us a good chance to see as much of the state as possible.
And so Stephen, your accent doesn't sound like from any of the 50 states. So where are you from? How did this idea to see the U.S. in such detail come about for you?
I'm from England originally, and I moved over here 2009. So we've been married almost 15 years. So the first 5 years of our marriage,
we've been married almost 16 years.
Almost 16. Did I say almost 15? Okay. I meant to say 15 rather than almost 15. But we spent the first 5 years of our marriage in the UK and then moved back over here in 2009. And at the time, that was to move out to California to be group home parents together. So it's kind of full-time foster parents. And our training was in Nebraska, and we were moving to California from Virginia. So we drove all the way there, stopping off in Nebraska along the way. And we tried to see as much of the states that we were driving through as possible, but because it had to be a fairly quick trip, we didn't get to see too much. But we said at the time, it'd be amazing to do a 50-state road trip at some point, so that we could actually see much more of the country. And then 6 months later, we drove back to Virginia and said the same thing because we went via a different route. And then the year later, it was Shae's 30th birthday, and I'd been trying to get a bunch of her friends together to celebrate her birthday, but they'd all just had kids and things like that, so it was a lot harder getting them all together. So we actually went on a road trip around the country to see them. And again, we kind of said at the time, it'd be awesome to do a 50-state road trip at some point, but it was really just kind of one of those pipe dream things where you say it and you have vague intentions of maybe doing it, but you don't necessarily think it'll ever actually happen. But then a few years ago, we were at a point in our lives, I'll let Shae kind of talk about that a bit more in a sec, but we were just at a point where we had a bit more freedom and all our income was being made online, and so we didn't have to be based in a certain place, and so we figured, okay, why not set off on a road trip and travel full time?
Yeah. Fantastic. And Shae, we have a lot of people in this group that often say they're trying to visit every country in the world. And they say, they've never really visited their home country much. So why is this a good idea for you to spend 3 to 5 weeks in every U.S. state?
I ask myself that every time we move. So why is this a good idea again? No, I am really enjoying it. I'm actually really loving it. I remember growing up and having friends whose parents had like one of those big, old Ecoline vans with, the like Captain Kirk type seats, and everybody could camp out and all these things. And we never did anything like that in my family. We, went on a couple of vacations, but my parents were entrepreneurs, so we didn't do a lot of family vacations and things. So I didn't see the national parks as a kid. I didn't go all over. So this has been a real opportunity to not only get an opportunity to see kind of some of the physical beauty that's in America, but also the beauty of the people, all the different places that we've been. And for the first year, I kept saying, Alabama's my favorite state. And everyone would say, really, seriously, Alabama's your favorite state? Why is Alabama your favorite state? And it's because of the people that we met in Enterprise, Alabama. We met them very early on in the road trip. It was March. We were there for the world's smallest St. Patrick's Day parade. And they introduced us to one girl named Jillian. Hi, Jillian. Because she was from Virginia. And then from there, they invited us to this after party at the brewery store. And then they invited us afterwards to a homebrew competition that night. And then they took us to see a museum, and then someone else had us over for dinner. And it was just a really lovely time. And we're still actually friends with them. Jillian now lives in Hawaii. We're hoping to visit her there. And our friends, JR and Rob, we both got to see them in Tennessee when they were up visiting family. So it's been really fun to get to meet people and now kind of have friends across the country that we genuinely like and genuinely get to spend time with. So that's been a really cool side effect of seeing it all, because we're about this far away from each other pretty much all the time. And so finding new people to talk to is always exciting.
Yeah, your car is smaller than the couch you're sitting on, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it is some days.
Yeah, it's a 2004 Toyota Corolla, and that basically contains pretty much everything that we own. And so, yeah, there's kind of space in the front seats for us, and everything else that we own is in the trunk and the back seat. So that's basically it that we're traveling around in.
And so talk about that process. You're very systematic about you're loading it up, how long you're staying in a place. So you unload it. You don't want to leave everything you own in the car overnight outside. I hear barking in the background. So there's quite a logistic operation every time you move somewhere.
Yeah, so we travel full time with our dog Truffles, and so that has an impact on what we can actually do and where we can stay, because it means that we have to find pet-friendly properties because we stay in hotels and Airbnbs. In terms of all the stuff in the car, it's kind of carefully Tetrised in. Everything has its place, and so we ended up getting a car top carrier recently, so that was actually quite nice in turn because it gave us a little bit more space.
Yeah, but we've been like a boa constrictor. We have grown to suit the size of the space that we have, rather than saying, okay, now the back seat can be empty. We have just expanded into the space that's available to us, which is not
that is true.
And I don't do anything with the packing. We have a whole system. I help roll out the carts. I then take the dog for a walk to go to the bathroom. He loads the car. I, go and check out, and I do like the goodbye, we had a great time stuff. And then he loads the car, we get in the car, he takes his pictures, I pick him up on the way out. Like, we have a whole system, and then it's just in reverse the other way.
And I want to go to, and I'll share the link in the post, both of the video and your companion post about it, your portable kitchen. This is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, if you like something that takes up half of the back seat of your car, it's a great thing, Stephen.
It is a great thing.
For some of us, we do not enjoy it.
Yeah, basically, Shae would much rather have it in our trunk, but the problem with the case is that it's kind of an inch or an inch and a half too high to fit in our trunk.
So I'd like to have it on the side of the road.
So, but it basically means that we can cook meals in any kind of hotel room because it has an Instant Pot. It has plates and silverware and dishes and things like that. Otherwise, we'd be stuck eating takeout and things like that. Because we're doing it on a budget of $100 a day, then it means we don't really have enough money to be able to eat out every single day as much as we might actually like. And so being able to cook meals in our hotel is much more useful in that respect. So yeah, we have this, what's basically meant to be for arts and crafts, but we've converted it so that it can be used as a portable kitchen.
That's very understated. I mean, tell us about the amount of items, I don't know, by count or something. I've shared the links, but it's like a Swiss Army knife within the Russian doll. Within, I mean,
and it's a little bit like a TARDIS as well, because there's actually a lot of stuff, or like Mary Poppins's bag and stuff, where you could just keep pulling out stuff and pulling out more stuff and more stuff. So yeah, it's got an Instant Pot. It's got 4 place settings in terms of plates and dishes. It's got a couple of Pyrex bowls, collapsible containers, collapsible colanders, collapsible microwave cover,
cutting
silverware,
boards,
cutting boards, knives, and just all kinds of other stuff. We use it to store a few other things like screwdrivers, just on the off chance we might end up needing that. Measuring tape,
which we did when we got our car top carrier. We needed the screwdriver to get under the weather stripping on the car.
So that was the first time we needed it in the last 2.5 years, but it eventually came in handy. So.
But all the little, he says it's an arts and crafts tub. For those of you that are familiar, it's a scrapbooking tub. And so it has tons and tons and tons of little teeny tiny pockets, which are typically for small beads or small fasteners. And we have one that has a lighter and some that have cork plugs and, for your wine. And we have toothpicks, and then he has little Ziploc bags. And I say he does because I do not participate in the kitchen at all, because I would prefer to leave it by the side of the road. So yes, it would be useful for a Manhattan-sized apartment. True story right there, for sure. Actually, our portable kitchen is probably bigger than most Manhattan apartments.
That is very true.
Period. You can probably fit more in there other than your bed.
The Corolla fits inside the portable kitchen.
Yes.
Almost, yeah.
Yes, we put everything in there. Yes, we actually just walk around and tote one small thing behind us.
Just add a little engine to the back.
Yes.
How about that piece you mentioned about pet-friendly hotels? And I've learned from you, I think there's some that are like a per stay fee, whereas others may be a per night fee. So you're very strategic, because those costs can add up quite a bit as well. So how are you figuring that out?
I will jump in and say, if you have a cute and friendly dog, it's sometimes a zero.
Yes.
Because they love your little dog.
Yeah.
Just keep it in mind. If you have a really rough dog, joking aside, pun aside, you maybe have to pay your fee.
But because literally the very first hotel that we stayed at was the Hyatt Place in Columbia, South Carolina. And as we were checking out, we were supposed to have a $75 pet fee, but they actually said that they were waiving it because truffles were so cute. And so that was actually quite nice. And other times, I don't know if we've always had it waived just because of her being cute, but I'd say probably about half the time when there's supposed to be a pet fee, it doesn't end up getting charged. And so we don't highlight that when we're checking out, because we don't want to pay extra.
To make sure that they're keeping up with their regulations. But tell them about
just pointing out the window and saying, look at what I'm dealing with as you're loading the car.
Exactly.
and she's hypoallergenic, so it's not like she's leaving fur over the couch or the bed or anything like that. And so they don't actually have any extra cleaning to do. And so we don't feel bad about that. Like if she was a dog that shed all the time, then might feel a little bit worse. But yeah, in terms of the pet fee, it varies by hotel and it varies by brand. So some places charge you a pet fee regardless of how long you're staying for. Some of them charge a fee that's per night, and others have kind of a mix of the two. So most Hyatt places are pet friendly, and they charge $75 if you're staying 1 to 6 nights, or $175 if you're staying a week or more. So most of the time at Hyatt places, we'll stay 6 nights just to kind of maximize our time there for the pet fee. But then there have been a few times we stayed over that, but I don't think we've ever actually been charged $175 for the pet fee with them. Other places, especially Marriott brands, they usually charge $100 per stay, which isn't so bad if you're staying for a week and a half or something like that, because then it works out to be $10 a night. But if you're just stopping on the way through to somewhere and you're only staying one night, paying $100 just doesn't make sense, because that's effectively what you'd be paying for the room in the first place. So yeah, it does make it a little bit more tricky trying to work out where we can stay as a result of that.
And I will say one thing so because of the way we choose to travel, we are not like get to your destination drivers. We don't want to drive 8-10 hours at a time. So one of the first questions we get asked usually is, don't you get tired of being in the car? But we're actually not in the car as often as people think we are, since we're on a road trip. We have days, trust me, where we're like, I cannot look at the car one more day. But for the most part, we try to stay and move 4 to 6 hours at a time, because we usually add on about 2 hours for stop, stretching our legs, goofing off, whatever. And so we don't have too many like one night stays. If we do, it's because we're trying to get somewhere else. Typically, we try and move somewhat strategically. We've learned that over time, because at the beginning of the trip, we were moving, after 2 days or after 5 days, and we were like, this is way too much moving. So we typically now try and do nothing less than 7 nights, 5 to 7 nights. 5 is now on the lower end. We usually do 7 to 10 nights in places now.
Yeah, and right now with COVID-19, then we're staying even longer in one place. And so when this first hit, we stayed in Albuquerque for 3 weeks, and then and then after that we headed up to Pueblo, Colorado, which is where we are at the moment. And so we originally booked a month in there, or in here, and then we just added another, I think it's like 3 weeks or something like that. So we're due to be here through the end of the month, and then we're going to be heading back east for this summer, but we'll be staying 3 weeks in Wichita along the way and things like that. So we're kind of trying to do our best to shelter in place and socially distance. Because we don't actually have a home, it's a little harder for us. And so most places, because we're trying to stay in Airbnbs at the moment, so we have a kitchen, so we kind of come into contact with far fewer people like you would do with a hotel. Then that makes it a little bit harder, because sometimes they'll be booked up for kind of 2 days in the middle of the month. So that limits the places where you'd be able to stay that are pet friendly, that have good Wi-Fi, that have a kitchen and things like that.
Yeah, pet friendly accommodation, when you add that filter in, takes out about half the hotels and about 75% of the Airbnb is available to us. And then we have to look for our price and our location and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. And in terms of paying, you pay with points, and points is a subject that maybe a smaller percent of our group is familiar with. So we'll get into that later, but let's talk about
small percentage, frankly. I'm just here, okay? I'm in charge of PR and being personable. He is in charge of points. So I will just go to sleep when we get to that part, okay? Or I'll just sit here and drink wine happily.
In terms of paying cash for longer stays and US road trips, I've taken some smaller road trips the past few years and been surprised how accommodation in a lot of smaller town and areas is more expensive than I've expected, especially if you're looking at the chains, but non-chains as well. The places where I would assume like $40, $50 would be fine, the cheapest are 90, 100. So what are some of the strategies for the people that are not interested in getting into the points programs?
I'd say one of the things is to look at week-long stays, because some hotel chains, especially the suite kind of chains like Candlewood Suites and Residence Inn, Town Place Suites and things like that, they'll often charge a lower rate if you're staying for a week. And so I'll sometimes check for that just to see if that's an option, because sometimes a hotel that would normally be $100 a night will drop down to 60 or something. So a similar kind of thing happened with the Candlewood Suites that we stayed at in Albuquerque. They actually had a buy 2 nights, get the third night free. And so effectively a third of our entire stay ended up being free because of that rate, which was quite nice. So we ended up paying, I can't even remember how much. I think it was something like $55, $60 a night or something like that. And that was for a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen and things like that. So that was actually a fantastic deal. So I'd say that's a good option. If you'll be staying anywhere near a city, like a large city, then taking a look out in the suburbs, just because usually those tend to be more reasonably priced.
By the airport and by hospitals,
yes.
we've tended to find both of those tend to be a little bit cheaper. Now, sometimes they are not always the most exciting areas to stay in, and maybe you don't want to go for lots of long walks at night there. But if you want somewhere that's safe and clean in a chain hotel, a lot of them we have found, particularly near hospitals, because they're looking to serve families that need to come and spend time there, or residents and things like that who are working there. We have found that they tend to be a little bit cheaper as well.
Yeah.
And I suppose especially park style ones as well. I'm thinking when we lived in New York, sometimes we'd go down to Princeton, and Princeton town is beautiful and they're always $200 a night. But then the area on the other side of the station where all the consulting firms are, so it's empty on the weekend. You know, these are 4-star hotels for $70 for the weekend. Weekday rates, they're 200 plus.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing as well, is that if you can time the days right, then that can work out in your favor, because I know that we used to live in Virginia, and so if you try booking anywhere in DC from Monday to Friday, then you're probably looking at $200 to $300 a night. If you book at the weekend, then you can get somewhere at Tyson's Corner for like $60, $70 a night or something like that. So it's still not in the center of DC, but it's somewhat drivable distance, or the metro getting it in there. So that's another option, is if you can travel at weekends, then especially if you're going to be visiting a city, then that can actually benefit you.
You didn't mention monthly rates. Are there areas where you mentioned weekly or monthly rates? I look at rental cars a lot, and monthly rates usually are more than weekly. Curious about hotels.
With hotels, because we normally, or on the road trip, we normally stay kind of 5 to 10 days in one place. I don't usually look at monthly rates too often. I have looked at them a little bit more over the last month or two, just because of COVID-19, and so we've been trying to stay in one place. But I'd say if you're looking at staying somewhere for a month at a time, then I'd actually check Airbnb first, because a lot of places will give you a significant discount on monthly rates. So some places I've seen are offering a 40-50% discount for monthly, and so that ends up being fantastic, because then you have a place all to yourself, you have a kitchen, you have a lot more space. And especially right now, because a lot of the hotel chains aren't offering breakfast and breakfast buffets and things like that, and are limiting services,
those amenities that you would be wanting in a hotel or paying for, you're not going to have available to you anyway.
Yeah, so like swimming pools might be closed, fitness rooms they might limit to one person at a time. So there's kind of, or certainly right now, there's much more limited appeal with staying in hotels. And so, if you're traveling anytime soon, definitely check Airbnbs. Hotels, I think that sometimes you can get better rates when staying a month at a time, but I check for that kind of thing so rarely that I'm not 100% sure about that.
And check rarely. I didn't hear you mention calling the hotels. So your 5 to 10 night stays. Is calling the hotel ever for that much?
Not call anyone at any time, anywhere.
No.
So I'll be lucky. No, wait, I'm sorry, that's a lie. He calls me 7 times when he's in the grocery store to confirm that he is purchasing the correct items. But that is the bulk of Stephen's phone calling abilities.
That's
now,
good.
I will say, we have seen people do that. They'll come in the lobby, they'll have checked whatever little booklet they have, or they'll be calling all the different places to figure out, we've literally rocked up into this town and this is where we're going to stay the night, and what are your prices, and what are your prices, and what are your prices. But we didn't even order through the drive-through at McDonald's today. We ordered online and then waited to pick it up, so that we can.
And that still took 15 minutes.
The introvert can really, that I'm desperate to talk to people when I'm like, I'll call them and find out. So, but Stephen pretty much avoids phone calls at all.
And in my defense, part of it is I hate making phone calls anyway, but part of it is also having an English accent. I always have to repeat myself, and they have a hard time.
Don't try and turn it around on that. Don't try and turn it around.
That's happened before.
It does, but it doesn't happen as often enough to warrant you not using the telephone.
But so my headphone piece keeps falling out, so that's why I have my finger in my ear the entire time.
Okay.
Another thing with making phone calls,
we wanted some British comedy interlude, so we're good to get it.
So. With booking hotels over the phone, one benefit of doing it online as well is that you can click through from a shopping portal, and so earn cashback as well. And so that's another reason why I try and do everything online, because especially with Marriott on IHG, you can often get 10% cashback, or through Rakuten, then you can get 10 membership rewards per dollar that you spend at a time. And so earning 10% cashback on top of credit card rewards and other discounts that you might get for booking online and things like that, it's well worth it. I mean, it might be possible to call a hotel and negotiate a better rate, but
and then if you are going to be paying cash, I know something that Stephen does is to purchase gift cards first that are either at a discount, or you even purchase it from the grocery store so you get fuel points back or whatever. So if you're going to pay cash anyway, at least try and make that cash work a little bit better for you by doing something like that, I would think, as well.
And so that depends on the brand. So IHG doesn't really offer gift cards at all, I don't think. Hilton, I think, offers them, but it's a lot harder to use them. Marriott, you can sometimes pick them up at a discount. Hyatt, last year they were offering them at a 10% discount, so we picked up some of those. Airbnb especially is good for discounted gift cards or fuel points and things like that from the grocery store to help save on those costs.
Because then we're able to save on gas later. So.
Because
you
like
open the door. So another site you have is GC Galore. Yeah. I'll share the link, and this is about buying gift cards. And I think to tee it up, a lot of it is, you mentioned Airbnb. It doesn't mean you're buying the gift card from Airbnb necessarily. You may be buying an Airbnb gift card at a supermarket that you said is offering a discount or like bonus fuel points. And so talk about that concept of third-party gift cards, why they're important to you, and how to get started on GC Galore for people that look and say, oh my God, this is overwhelming.
So with, like, just to give Kroger as an example, and this applies for Kroger and all of the other grocery stores they own. So they own Dillon's, they own Ralph's, Fry's, Smith's, so a whole ton of different grocery stores around the country. And usually at least once a month, they'll have a digital coupon offering 4 fuel points for every $1 that you spend on gift cards. And that can save you up to 14% of gas. That's based on being able to fill up with 35 gallons at a time. And so our car only takes up to 11 or 12 gallons. So we only get kind of a third of that benefit, unfortunately. But if you have a vehicle with a much larger gas tank, then that can end up being a fantastic deal, because you can buy a gift card at Kroger, let's say Amazon or something like that. And if you can fill up with 35 gallons, you're saving 14% on Amazon or Airbnb or whatever kind of gift card that you buy.
Or restaurant that you want to eat out at.
Exactly. So that can end up being a really good deal. And then Amazon every so often will run these deals where if you redeem 1 American Express membership rewards point, then you can save 20%, and that's good on gift cards, and that can save you up to $50 at a time, depending on the kind of deal running at that point. So that's when I often try and stock up on Airbnb gift cards or hotels.com gift cards, because it means that we're saving 20% on those gift cards, which is a fantastic savings, and so that really helps reduce our costs. So with GC Galore, that came about because I've been riding on Frequent Miler for almost 2.5 years now, and we cover some gift card deals there, especially kind of Visa and MasterCard gift card deals, but some third-party gift card deals too. But I was noticing that there were just a ton more deals that we weren't covering because they weren't really notable in terms of making Frequent Miler readers aware of it, but they could still be good for personal use and possibly for gift card resellers. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to set up my own site. And so I set up GC Galore about 1.5 years ago. And so that posts every kind of gift card deal that I can find, whether that's online or in store.
And he is here for you for that, because he has every deal you can imagine. If you find a deal that Stephen Pepper hasn't written about, I will be surprised.
Yes, and please let me know if you do.
Or don't, because I would like to see him occasionally, but maybe not someday.
I just posted your link of restaurant gift card promo card deals. But for somebody, and I'll pick Uber Eats, pick DoorDash, somebody that is using one of these services right now, and this idea of stacking discounts and getting that. Just walk us through your ordering process for one of the services like that you're using. Okay, so if we just take DoorDash, at the moment, there's a website called My Gift Cards Plus, and they're offering 10% cash back on DoorDash gift cards, and that's good. They have a limit of $500, and so that means you get up to $50 back if you bought $500 worth of DoorDash gift cards. And so that can be a really good way of saving money. Otherwise, you could buy DoorDash gift cards at Kroger right now and save up to 14% on gas. If you have a Samsung phone, there's Samsung Pay, which is compatible with a lot of their phones, and that's where you can buy gift card, or there's all different aspects of Samsung Pay, but they have gift card deals in there, and they're offering 10% off DoorDash gift cards as well. And so it could just be a really good way of just saving money on your everyday spending. And then there's another website called Raise, which is where you can buy discounted gift cards that other people have bought and they're reselling. You buy them at a discount. And so sometimes the discounts might be 2%, other times the discounts can be like up to 25%, depending on what brand that you're actually buying. And so if you're going to be spending this money anyway, then it's definitely worth buying gift cards either at a discount or where you're earning cash back or bonus rewards or whatever.
just to make it more rewarding, because otherwise you're just effectively wasting your money.
Yeah, so like me, complete gift card dummy, if any of you are like, yeah, okay, you just said a lot of words. Stephen made this face at the beginning of it. That's the face that I make all the time. Like basically, like, so Stephen knows like which credit cards sometimes have deals on things too, or if you spend it this much at a grocery store, you get X% back or points or whatever. And he'll literally just say to me, take this credit card, go to Kroger, buy this gift card. So let's say I wanted to go to Red Lobster and they're doing 4 times the fuel points. So I go and I buy a $25 gift card to Red Lobster, and then I take it, and then I go and use that at Red Lobster, and we've gotten the fuel points. Like that's the very like most basic level. Then if you're like Stephen, you might go through like a cashback portal first, and then go through to this next website, and then through to this next website in order to be able to redeem those gift cards.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to bring it down.
And
I'm just trying to get everybody fixed from this to like us having fun again. Okay. The only person having fun right now is Stephen Pepper.
Maybe one person in the audience too. But,
okay, all right. I know that Nick is probably on here from Frequent Miler trying to get sneaky ideas, but that's it.
And then there's the in-store shopping app. So something like Drop, Dosh. These are apps you install on your phone, and they work like the portal.
On my phone.
Yes, and so those can be useful. So Dosh had a deal recently where you could earn cash back at Staples, and that one didn't work out great for everyone because a lot of people went out and bought some Visa gift cards at Dosh, and so I forget the exact deal. I think it was 5% cash back, and you could earn up to like $10 or $20 back per day or something like that. And so a lot of people going out and buying a $200 Visa gift card, and so that would make it profitable because you'd be getting like $10 back, $20 back or something like that, and then earning all the credit card rewards as well. And then Dosh decided to change the terms of the offer to exclude gift cards. But sometimes that doesn't happen. But yeah, they're all kind of
simple. So let's keep going with the is DoorDash on Drop or Dosh or any of those? I know Uber Eats is, yeah.
Trying to think. Uber Eats is on some portals, Grubhub is on some portals, but they seem to come and go, and sometimes you have to specifically click through from the portals. Other times you can just link your credit card to the app in order to be able to earn the cash back. And so it completely depends on the portal, on the app and things like that. So there's other different sites that you might be able to use. So there's Acorns. Apps include Dosh, Drop. There's Bumped, which gives you stock back in certain companies that you select which retailer you want to use in certain categories and things like that. And so that can earn you effectively cash back with that. And then there's shopping portals that you can click through, airline portals and things like that. There are a lot of different methods out there to kind of get rewarded when either buying gift cards or just doing your kind of general day-to-day shopping and things like that.
And it sounds like the general concept is with all of these, you're either linking your credit card so it's registered in their system, or every time you're shopping, whether on a browser, whether on your phone app, you're starting at the portal or the app, and then it launches the retailer that you're going to buy from. So you're on Dosh or Drop, you select Uber Eats, it opens up Uber Eats for you, and then it knows to track the reward for you.
Exactly.
And one tiny thing that Stephen taught me that maybe everyone knows except for me, which is possible, is that if you're going to check things ahead of time, to use like incognito mode so that it doesn't register that you've already been to their site, because there's sometimes through those portals that it gets a little bit iffy. So just as an extra little tip, do incognito mode when possible.
That is very true, yeah, because that way it doesn't, you then don't have any cookies on your computer when you click through from shopping portals.
Cookies, let's talk about cookies. Okay.
And one other thing, I guess, just on the topic to mention is things like Amex offers and Chase offers. So those are offers that you would have, like Amex offers are offers that you would have on your American Express card. When you log in, if you scroll down, then you'll see a list of things that might be spend $100 at this certain retailer and get $20 back or 2,000 membership rewards and things like that. And so a lot of the time it's for retailers where we're never going to be spending any money, but other times they have some really good offers there. And so those are places where you can sometimes buy gift cards to lock in a discount. And so that can end up being useful.
Yeah, like Lowe's, I think. Like, we don't shop at Lowe's because we have no home to home improve.
Yes.
So we go to Lowe's when it rains to walk truffles, and we go to Lowe's to buy gift cards. Those are our two reasons for going to Lowe's. That's pretty much it.
So yeah, at the start of this year, there was a Lowe's Amex offer, which gives you 10% back when spending up to $1,000 there. And that's good in store and online, but Lowe's stores have a really good gift card back. And so you can get Visa gift cards, you can get Amazon gift cards, you can get grocery store gift cards and things like that. So with that, I've just been going in the past. I actually went in the other day because I needed a Airbnb gift card. So I went in, bought a $500 Airbnb gift card. And so that saved us $50 straight away, just thanks to that Amex offer. So those kind of things can just be easy savings.
And anyone that is traveling with their dog, that's another pro tip. When it's raining and you can't walk your dog anywhere, find the dog friendly places. Home Depot mostly is, Lowe's, like Michael's, the pet store. And so we take Truffles around to get sniffs on days where we have prolonged days of rain. I know most of you are probably like, what? But, you know, just like you would take your child to the playground. I mean, you can take your child to Lowe's, but you have to watch them a lot more closely than we have to with Truffles. Keep your children on a leash, which some people do, but whatever. So that would be what I would say as a pro pet travel tip. So that.
And then even stores that you wouldn't expect, I think Bed Bath & Beyond and Old Navy stores tend to be pet friendly. So
depends on the store. Yes.
All right, so their heads are going to explode with the points, so we'll take a break there. Rick asked, he said, thanks for making me aware of the giant trolls. Do you have any other favorite unusual art installations or destinations?
Okay, so
I've been thinking about this.
Cool.
I've been watching this poor Facebook user wanting to tell us while I've been listening to you blah, blah, blah about points. This is my turn, and you can talk.
Cool. So if you want to explain the trolls for anyone who doesn't.
I wasn't going to explain the trolls. I was going to tell them my favorite unusual arts installations.
Okay, you go ahead and do that, and then I'll go back to the trolls.
No, we want to hear what are the trolls.
Someone saw more trolls than me, so he can tell you about the trolls because he went off without me, left me behind in America to watch our poor dog who was devastated to be without her father for 2 whole weeks while he gallivanted off to Europe and saw trolls without me. And I didn't
even beat Greg in the end.
And so. I don't mean like European people. I just mean actual trolls. So I would say for us, what we have enjoyed doing is sculpture hunting. So that's sort of how we ended up finding the trolls in the first place. But when you go to a lot of towns across America, they have various actual like sculptures for things. So I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. They have mermaids. When you go to North Carolina, they have like Pegasus or they have dolphins. And then we went to Chicago and they have lighthouses. And so typically these are art installations that local artists have done, businesses pour the money in. It's usually a fundraiser and they're up and around the city. And so it's a great way to kind of take your pet on a walk or just yourselves on a walk to go and see all the different sculptures. We have found in Abilene, Texas, they have children's storybooks, sculptures all around their town because they're home of like the children's illustrator something or other, you know. So they have these little things that connect you. There are little mice that are in Greenville, South Carolina that you can go and find little teeny mice sculptures everywhere. And so that's kind of, I think, in terms of like interesting art or unusual art, in Wamego, Kansas, they have Totos because of Wizard of Oz. And so our little dog is Truffles and she looks like Toto. She's black and small. And so we were able to walk around and find all the different Totos, but they're all like themed differently. Like the Toto that's at this public swimming pool is wearing like goggles and a towel and stuff like that. And so I think those are kind of, for me, some of the more, we're not big art people. We're not anti-art. We just don't, it's not, when people say to us, like, you've got to go to this art museum, we've got to really have a reason to go. And so this is kind of a fun way to experience kind of community art in some really beautiful ways. They did in Spartanburg, South Carolina, they have these really cool light bulb sculptures and all these kind of things that are very intricate, very beautiful, very community focused and things, which I really enjoy seeing. But you tell about the trolls and how you found them and how you went to see them without me.
Well, just carrying on with the art, with the sculpture hunting quickly, a really good way of exploring a city as well, because they're usually quite spread out, and you can often find a map from their visitor center or things like that, and so that way you can see a fair bit of the town as well while you're walking around. So it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. You get to have a fun time enjoying all this art, but you also get to see a fair bit of the city that you might not have otherwise. But yeah, with the trolls, we came across them when we were in Chicago on the first year of our road trip. Shay's mum and stepdad came out to visit us because Shay and her mum's birthdays were a day apart. So that way they got to celebrate their birthdays together. And so for her mum's birthday, we went to the Modern Arboretum, which is in Lisle, just outside of Chicago. And they have this art installation by a Danish artist called Thomas Stambo. And he's created these giant trolls. And by giant, they're like, some of them I'd say are probably a good 30 feet tall or something, like possibly bigger. And they're all just made from reclaimed wooden pallets and things like that. But they're just incredible pieces of art, and we really enjoyed looking for all of them. I think there was kind of 5 or 6.
There were 6 and a troll hideout.
Yes, and a troll hideout, that's right. And so then so I'd written a blog post about that, and then a few months later, I noticed that we were suddenly getting a whole ton of people visiting our website on that particular post, and I couldn't work out why. It turns out that Thomas Stambo himself had actually come across that blog post and shared it on his Facebook page, and he has a whole ton of followers, and so a lot of those people came and saw that. But then when I was on his Facebook page, I noticed that he'd created a bunch of trolls at Bernheim Forest in Kentucky.
3 or 4 trolls.
Mm-hmm. And we were actually in Kentucky at the time, and so we're like, well, why not take a trip over there? So we went to find them and really enjoyed that.
But what was super cool about those, because it's reclaimed wood, and it's reclaimed wood wherever you are, in Kentucky, it's all about Kentucky bourbon. And so it was all bourbon barrels. So you could see all the different spots where the bung was and different stamps and things, but it was all reclaimed. For the most part, it was all reclaimed bourbon barrels, which was really cool.
So then last year, as part of Frequent Miler, we were doing a challenge called 40K to Far Away. So we, myself, Greg, and Nick all had 40,000 points to use and $400, and we had to travel as far as we could, kind of in whatever way we decided to interpret that. So I decided to, my initial plan didn't quite work out, but I ended up heading over to Europe and then touring all around a bunch of different countries in Europe. And then I discovered during the course of my research that Thomas Stambo had created quite a few trolls in different European countries. So there's some in, it looks like you've shared that one, in Boom, which is in Belgium. There are 7 trolls and this massive tower that he's created, and that's done on the side of the Tomorrowland music festival. And so I went and found all of those. And then when I was in Denmark, I stayed one night in Copenhagen. I didn't actually get to see downtown Copenhagen, but on the outskirts there, he's hidden, I think it's 6 trolls in the suburbs that you can visit. And so I went to find all of them. And so that was just a lot of fun. And again, it got me to, gave me the opportunity to see a side of Denmark that you wouldn't normally get to experience. And so that was a lot of fun too.
And Blenheim Forest in Kentucky saw a 300% increase, not from our post, but a 300% increase by putting the trolls there. You know, of people going to the forest and things like that. And, you know, unfortunately, the Arboretum in Illinois was not pet friendly, but the one in Kentucky was. And so we were able to bring Truffles with us on that adventure, which was really nice as well, because we are always looking for ways that we can include her. And there's been some really unexpected ways that we've been able to include her. Some places where we've learned that if you call ahead and you say, I have a tiny dog, and she sits in the backpack, they're like, bring her in. So she was able to go to the National Mustard Museum. Yes, there's a National Mustard Museum. It's in Wisconsin, and it's amazing, and you should totally go.
It's actually a lot of fun.
Because you can try 210 different types of mustard. And you might think to yourself, what do I need with 200? What don't you need with 210 different types of mustard?
And it's random flavor. Like they have lavender mustard and just
wine
all
mustard,
kinds of different mustard.
Black truffle mustard. And then we were able to take her into the Wizard of Oz Museum in Wamego in her backpack. So a lot of times it's as long as they can be carried. So if you have a husky and you want to carry them, that's entirely up to you. But we are fortunate that our dog is quite small. So she has a little backpack that she goes in for when she can't walk around. But we typically try to keep her fairly dog-ish. She goes hiking. Her longest hike is 10 miles that she's done on her little legs, you've ever seen our little Truffles, her legs are about 4 inches tall. And
When
so
haven't we seen Truffles?
she is around. She was on our lap. She then took herself down to the floor. I've tried to get her to come over and be a part of things. I teach pet photography online, and so she often is snatched for visual aids on the internet. And she's, while she does have an Instagram and is, quite fetching, but not everybody, she's also a little camera shy at times. But her dad has scooped her up, and here she is. So this is Truffles, looking a little bezubbed. She's due for a groom, but like all of us, no haircuts allowed right now. So this is Truffles. She's a Silky Terrier Poodle mix. She's about 11 pounds and about 98% very, very sweet and about 2% super grumpy.
Yes.
And Shae, talk about your business. You referred to one thing you're doing. There's probably multiple, I think.
There is, yeah. So when we left on the road trip, I had been a youth worker. I got my degree in England in youth work, and then began teaching at a private school where you're not required to have like a teaching degree. But I had basically been doing informal education for 12 years by then. And so when we left on the road trip, I was like, oh, good. I am so sick of middle schoolers. I love middle school, but that age is 11 to 14 for those of you who maybe have like different names for what your middle schoolers would be. So think of the children that you know that are 11 to 14 years old, the ones that you don't want to be around because they're 11 to 14. They're my favorite. So I thought, well, after 15 years, it's time for a little break from them. And so for the first year, I really focused on Truffles, booming Instagram with 400 followers, and my own travel and pet photography and things like that. Started writing children's stories. And then I found a company that I was able to teach whatever I wanted to on there. And so about a year and a half ago now, I started working with OutSchool. And so I hope I can say that. Am I allowed to say that I teach for OutSchool? Okay. So it's too late if I don't. I teach on there. And so I'm able to teach whatever I want. So I teach what I'm passionate about. I teach pet photography. I teach travel photography. I do virtual field trips. That's my most popular class. I teach that 5 times a week. I charge $7 per student for 45 minutes, which you might think, well, that's not a lot of money, but I get 13 students per time, and I do that 5 times a week. And so when we go places, I take photos and I take videos on site, and then I kind of bring that experience back to our students. And then I also teach like history and geography just because I love it. I teach a few book clubs, but I do it from a life skills perspective because that's what all of my training has been in, is helping young people kind of learn more about themselves, learn more about the world. And so like using fiction books to learn more about yourself, to learn more about empathy, to learn more about problem solving, things like that. So, but like I said, primarily my virtual field trips are kind of my big class that most of my students really enjoy. And what I do is I give them a little fake passport stamp for every time. So this is the passport group. I give them a little fake passport stamp for every time they go to one of my classes. And when they get 12 stamps, so when they've attended 12 classes, I send them a postcard from the road. So if their parents are happy to give me their mailing address, I send them a handwritten postcard. If not, I send them it digitally. I just take a picture of both sides and send it as a PDF to them. And so that's kind of—
You're not writing on the back of an expired gift card from Stephen's Hobby. It's a real postcard.
No, those poor things. No, but I did have to stock up. So we were in New Mexico, and I was like, Stephen, I have all of these students because when COVID-19 hit, we had a huge influx of students. And so my virtual field trips just skyrocketed. And so I was like, I don't have any postcards to send them. We're not going anywhere to get postcards. So I went to the Walmart in New Mexico and saw they had postcards. So I bought 20 New Mexico postcards. So none of the kids have been to New Mexico with me, but they're all getting New Mexico postcards because that's the best that I can do right now. But it's still been really fun and really rewarding. And the reason that I do it, because Stephen's income for us is passive for the most part, and is what we need for our $100 a day budget. My money kind of just goes into a little bit of a savings account. We dip into it for things that might fall outside the budget, or if I want some new photography gear, things like that. Those are kind of what we use it for. And it's just kind of going into savings at this point. I don't actually do it because I need to, although you can certainly build your business online and do that. But I do it because it brings me a lot of joy to be able to teach from the road, which I really enjoy. And for those of you who think, well, I do teach ESL, ESL has its own ways of being very, very rewarding. But what I love about OutSchool is that you can teach what you're really passionate about. And I'm not particularly passionate about ESL. I enjoy it. I have my kids that are regulars. I teach on VIP Kid a couple of days a week, but not very much. My primary focus is OutSchool. So if you are based in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or the UK, those are the 5 supported countries right now to be able to be a teacher on OutSchool. So.
I think I should cut you off. In the travel blogging world now, that means you shouldn't be sharing this. You should create an e-course and get all the revenue on the e-course for how to teach the e-course.
Maybe that might be in the works, but
we're looking forward to it.
Everybody keep this to yourself. Don't tell anybody.
I'm thinking of people in this group that have thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, millions of photos that they have nobody willing to look at them. And so suddenly you can get people to pay to look at your photos and
maybe
they would pay to have some attentive people say, "Oh, great photo! Oh, show me the 100th photo of the pyramid. We only see 99."
Yeah,
and it really helps because Shae's a really engaging teacher as well, and so I would really have loved to have had a teacher like her when I was at school, just because she can make really dull or potentially dull subjects much more interesting.
Like today, I taught about Big Brutus, the world's largest electric shovel. You are welcome. It's amazing. Big Brutus is incredible, and it's in Kansas, and you would never think it's amazing. And I taught a 13-year-old girl about it today, and at the end of class, she was like, "This is so interesting." Her face at the beginning when I said world's largest electric shovel was, and by the end, she was like, "Is there more videos of Big Brutus?" So,
because when we drove there, I was picturing like a hand shovel, but somehow being electrified to make it a little bit easier. But I can't even remember. Like you probably know all the stats. So.
I do know all the stats. Not that everyone wants to hear them all. Plus, you haven't paid your $7. I'm not telling you about Big Brutus. No, he's 160 feet tall. Picture the diggers that work by the side of the road and like scoop up the road. He's 160 feet tall. He scoops up 3 railroad cars worth of coal at a time, or he used to. He worked for 11 years, round the clock, 24 hours a day, and scooped up 9 million tons of coal.
Wow. And you mentioned assuming something is boring, and I was going to mention Kansas, and you went right into Kansas. So one of the trips that I was taking that I realized the site, the depth of what you all are doing is when I had my first visit to Kansas last year. I went to some historical sites, Brown v. Board of Education site, the Eisenhower Presidential Library, but then I didn't make it all the way to the west, and you had these. I'm going to share. It's a West Coast, West Kansas road trip, and I simply never would have imagined these rock formations that you've seen. So there's Castle Rock and Monument Rocks in Gove County, Kansas. So talk about this, and you've got, I think, almost 20 posts on your site related to Kansas to show the depth you're doing.
Yes, we loved Kansas a lot more than we loved some of the other states. Yeah. Connecticut, I'm looking at you. So if you follow our posts at all, then you know that we don't like Connecticut. I'm very sorry, Connecticut people. You're going to have to work very hard to convince us that you're amazing after our 3 weeks there. But the Kansas time that we spent was actually a lot of fun. So surprisingly, Kansas has a lot of like grid roads. And so you have to kind of go off, and you're going to end up on a lot of dirt roads, and you're going to feel like, where am I? What am I doing? But for the most part, just follow your GPS and you will end up at these really incredible structures. So we ended up at Castle Rock. We almost ended up living at Castle Rock because our car almost did not leave Castle Rock. So we had it, was it loaded up that day?
It was, yeah.
It was moving day. Yeah. And so we went to Castle Rock, and there had been rain or snow. And so we went down as far down the hill as we could. And then we realized like we were in the mud, and there was going to be no way
it was halfway down that we realized, and it was like muddy. And so it was kind of like valley carving it down these corners. And so weren't even like using any kind of drive at that point. It was just purely trying to maneuver our way around the corners of the time. And so Shae was driving, and she did a fantastic job of, like, on the way down, of even just being able to what's the Fast and Furious? The drift. Yeah,
yes,
kind of like
Tokyo
drifting.
drift.
Yeah, Tokyo drifting down in Kansas. Not really what you would expect.
Kansas drifting. It's super amazing. Trust me. So when we had to leave, Stephen got out and pushed enough to get it going, and I literally just drove over like 5 foot tall Kansas grass. I was like, too bad for you. I just drove. But it was these beautiful rock formations that are, Kansas is very flat. It's not actually the flattest state. Apparently Illinois overall is the flattest state, apparently. I know that same face I made because I've seen Kansas. And so I was really surprised. But yeah, it was just really these beautiful big mountain structures, and you can just kind of walk all over them. Got tons of great photos, had a really nice time just walking around and seeing them, and they were very unexpected. I think some of that serendipity, we write about it occasionally on our blog. We do a lot of planning. Stephen particularly has about 75 spreadsheets that plan everything that we do. I'm sorry, that was exaggerating. He has
77.
Yeah, he has 68 spreadsheets. But we do a ton of planning, and yet it's always these things that we never expected, like getting out to Monument Rock and things like that, that we get surprised by, that are some of our favorite memories from the trip.
Yeah, and so Kansas just had all kinds of interesting things. And so there was I think it was a Sand Sage Wildlife Refuge, which was when we were staying in Garden City. And so that has all kinds of bison. So we got to go on kind of like a personalized tour, and it was free, but you can just donate.
It was totally a personalized tour, just the two of us, because no one else came. So it was us and this like guide out in the middle of the buffalo.
Because it was wintertime, there was just been a lot of snow, and so it was January, I think, when we were visiting. And then Topeka was interesting because it has Brown v. Board of Education and their state capital. And then Wamego was interesting because they've, even though that wasn't where Wizard of Oz was set, they've kind of adopted their town as kind of Wizard of Oz town.
They have Toto's Tacos. They have all the little Toto statues. They have a Wizard of Oz winery that's beautiful. And then they have the Wizard of Oz Museum, which if your dog can be carried, you can bring your dog to the Wizard of Oz Museum.
Yeah.
And just memorabilia from the movie and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
And then there's Big Brutus. Wichita was okay. Like, I don't think it really blew us away.
No, my favorite thing in Wichita closed, though. There was a dog-friendly restaurant called Fetch, and you could bring your dogs in, and there was a dog park outside, and it was amazing. And it was on Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares or something, so they got totally redone, and it was so exciting. And unfortunately, they closed very soon after we were there. We are not the kiss of death for restaurants and things. Like, normally it's a really positive thing. But that was our favorite thing in Wichita, and it closed. So.
All right, and let's close with the trip that you've planned on your 68 to 75 spreadsheets, but has been interrupted, and that's Alaska, which I think is one that pretty much any traveler is interested, but maybe daunted by the distance and the costs, whether they turn out to be real or perceived. So talk us through what you had planned and what you had learned before that trip got
real. Costs are real.
The costs are very, very real, yeah. Because we're on a 50-state road trip, we wanted to take our car everywhere. So we were planning on driving to Alaska, and eventually, just touching on Hawaii very briefly, we're planning on having that be our last state, and ideally we'd like to ship our car there. It looks like it costs about $1,000, and so even though it's kind of an unnecessary expense, it'd be fun to say that our car's been to all 50 states, so long as it actually lasts that long. But going back to Alaska, yeah, we were planning on driving through. There were various things to see along the way when you're heading through Canada, so we were planning on taking a different route on the way up and then on the way back. And so I think we were heading up through Banff, was it, on the way there, and then heading back down through Vancouver on the way back, I think it was, so that way we could see a whole bunch of beautiful stuff along the way in Canada. But yeah, when it came to the Alaska planning, we knew that it was going to be expensive, but we hadn't anticipated kind of quite how expensive it was going to be, especially like we knew all the activities that we would want to do would cost a fair bit of money, but it was just the accommodation as well, because everyone tries to visit Alaska at the same time, just because there's a very finite period each year where it's open to actually visit. Then you end up having to pay much more for accommodation. So even if you're trying to use points, then you would have to use a whole ton of points. And we try and maximize our points to use as few as possible so we can get the most free stays. And so that wasn't really going to be an option either. So,
we looked at renting an RV. We looked at just, even though we love having our car with us, we thought, fine, if it means leaving the car behind so we can stay in an RV. We looked at that. Renting RVs during that time is incredibly expensive. We did discuss camping. One of us is very excited about camping. I mean, not like always, I don't really like to camp, but if my choice is not go to Alaska because I can't afford it or camp, I'm willing to camp. One of us is not willing to camp in the way that we would need to camp to make it happen.
It's the wild camping that I'm not such a big fan of. If we're like on a campsite that has toilets and showers and things like that, then I'm absolutely like fine with camping. It was more the staying in the wilderness, carrying everything in and out ourselves, and not
Stephen Fancy Pants Peppers needs a potty, basically, is what it comes down to. And you can decide whether or not whose side you fall on, if it's smarter. But I think that staying wild camping a couple of days to be able to see more of Alaska is more beneficial than not. So I'm just saying that's the ambulance coming after I broke Stephen's legs because
I had it open. I figure out in Seattle, it's not like in New York where I used to live, where you couldn't get 1 minute into a meeting without some sirens and like people running on the fire escape or something.
And then the other thing with wild camping is having truffles with us, and so
that is a concern.
We haven't ever actually done wild camping or anything like that, and so we haven't even really been to bear areas or anything like that. And so the idea of doing wild camping and having a small dog with us, and
a snack,
basically
a snack to attract bears and mountain lions. And she's feisty. She will do her best to protect us forever, but that would be it. So that is a small concern that we do have about that, which is why we were thinking camper van or RV. The main reason is because the doorway to the Arctic, the gateway to the Arctic Park is kind of further up, and there's not a whole lot of places to stay near there, because our goal is to try and see as much of a state as possible. And I think if you're going to go to Alaska and you're going to see as much of it as possible, there is a very remote town that has a small museum up at the top of Alaska that I'm desperate to get to go to. But to get there is quite a feat. So we have found some ways that we're hoping to be able to get there one day. But yeah, so it was super disappointing because we were just so excited. We had a lot of really fun, exciting things planned, the usual stuff, bears and, salmon runs and all of that kind of thing, but also just, being able to see the wildlife in general there, not even necessarily all the bears and things, but and just to experience someplace so wild and so different sounds really exciting.
So just to clarify, we are still going to be going to Alaska, but basically the original plan had been to go this summer. And so we'd kind of had it in mind that we were going to head up there. I think it was kind of late May time when the roads were opened, and then head back in September. We were going to apply for the Denali Road Lottery that we know that you went on last year. And it was kind of that inspired us to stay even longer, just so that we would hopefully be able to do that. And so then as we got into the nitty gritty and planning of it, we just realized that
we're going to have to double or triple our daily budget. And so we need to save.
Yeah, and so on a budget of $100 a day, it just wasn't going to be achievable no matter what we like. To be honest, even if we did wild camping every single day with all of the stuff we'd want to do, it just wasn't going to be achievable. So we decided to postpone that earlier in the year, which ended up not necessarily being such a bad thing, because we would have had to cancel that anyway, because we wouldn't have been able to go this summer because of COVID-19. And so, yeah, it was super disappointing, because we had been kind of hyping it up in our minds that we were going to get to spend 2.5 months or something like that in Alaska this summer. So we had been really excited.
And I was promised Montana, because I was told, oh, you're giving up Alaska, Shae, I love you, here you can have Montana. no, Montana. No, I'm going to Ohio this summer, everybody. Ohio.
Although to be fair, we have a whole bunch of friends there.
We
so.
do, but it's not the same. I'm still barely speaking to you.
But when you get to Alaska, you can earn Alaska miles at Safeway stores in Alaska. So that's for Stephen to get excited about. And,
oh yeah,
I'm interested on that drive-by of Gates of the Arctic because I've looked in the town there's a town that's sort of near the park boundary, but it looks like you're fording a river and some other nature to try to get technically within the park. So I'm very happy to let you experiment and report back on how far you get into the park.
And you see us pushing our car.
I was going to say, and we'll be doing that in our Toyota Corolla, so that could be a special.
That's providing nothing terrible befalls our Toyota Corolla, because we had the opportunity to drive a Tesla recently, and I think our car is sick.
Yeah.
There's not even a theoretical road towards Gates of the Arctic. It's just a direction that you can try. So I've been trying to get more info on, because otherwise you're flying in by little planes and that, which is a big ticket as well.
But one thing we did notice, I can't even remember what the town was that was incredibly far north. It's some unusual name that has like a Q.
It's probably a Native American
two
name,
Qs in it or something like that. So I've got no idea how to pronounce it. But there was a airport somewhere nearby, and you could fly. It was either from Fairbanks or Anchorage directly there on Alaska, and it was only going to be 5,000 mileage plan miles. And so it was actually incredible value in that respect. But
the intra-Alaska
so we may end up
prices, bigger luggage allowance. There's a whole bunch of benefits.
Yep.
So yeah, we're looking forward to doing that, but that may end up being like year 4, year 5 on the road trip now once we've saved up a bit more. But now that Shae's teaching a lot more online at the moment, so we're kind of putting all that money aside, and so we're kind of budgeting for that to be able to splash out a bit later on, so we can. Because yeah, like she said, if we're going to do it, we want to do it properly rather than just going there and not being able to afford to do anything in Alaska, because otherwise what's the point? So
it's going to be year 6 or 7, you think, is the current plan when you complete the line?
So
it was supposed to be a 5-year road trip, but honestly 2020 is pretty much a wash. I mean, unless something really dramatically amazing happens. We were due to spend time out west this year. We were due to have Stephen's family come over from England. We had a lot of plans. We were due to fly to Europe later this year from the West Coast. But really, the whole point, we're literally sitting in our Airbnb for most of the time working. And so we hadn't planned to go back to the East Coast for another year. And then we thought, well, why, if we have to sit in the same place, why don't we at least get where my family and friends could reach us within 2 to 4 hours once social distancing is a little less specific, that hopefully by kind of the summer, fall, we can spend a little bit of time with friends and family. Why just sit over here in the West Coast just to sit here when we would have the opportunity to see them? So we're going to head back through Kansas because it's such an amazing state. And then we're going to head through Ohio. The original plan, again, the plan has changed a million times this year. The plan was to go to Maine, but Maine is doing 2-week quarantines. And so even if we got up there for a month, we'd have to sit in quarantine for 2 weeks. And so we're probably not going to Maine. And then the plan that my family and friends are mostly in Virginia. So we would find somewhere along the East Coast to be within 2 to 4 hours of them so that we can spend time with them once some of the social distancing restrictions come up. And then we'll decide. And then the plan, I guess, would kind of be to start again or continue on probably in 2021, depending on how things are going. So we're trying to be really responsible, but we're also trying not to just be like, well, that's the road trip done. We're just trying to kind of be in a bit of a holding pattern right now.
Yeah. And then in Virginia, we especially like Roanoke and Richmond. So it might be that we spend a couple of months there this summer, just because Roanoke especially has a lot of hiking opportunities because of the Appalachian Mountains. And then Richmond is in kind of a sweet spot just because it's closer to Hampton Roads, which is where friends and family are, but it's also close enough to be able to drive to go hiking places. And then you have
DC is only a couple hours away. There's the James River.
The James River, that's it. I was going to say Elizabeth.
The plantations, yeah.
All right. So hopefully we'll be able to enjoy some things this summer.
Yeah.
What a great perspective. We'll follow along however you make of the travels, and look forward to our continued virtual field trips with you, Stephen and Shae.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. This has been really fun.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.